Human history is littered with the corpses of people who had stuff worth stealing. Animals. Water. Shiny things. Fertile land. Spices.
Nutmeg slice. Tea?
But when it came to stuff worth pinching, one continent had it all. Ivory, copper, cotton, rubber, wood, tin, gold, diamonds, and people. As cheap energy, slaves were unbeatable until a less troublesome energy source was discovered and a new era began. Human numbers increased 5 times over, and with each person wanting more and more stuff, oil became the resource worth fighting for all around the world.
Exactly the opposite is happening to the very thing that needs to happen. These things need to be speeded up, and actually they're getting slowed down. Plenty of politicians are talking about it, but when it comes down to it, it's just not happening. It's just not happening, folks.
Climate scientists can estimate how much of the remaining fossil fuels we can safely burn. This amount is called the global cap. Under this proposal, the world's governments would make a binding international agreement detailing how to distribute the global cap. The earlier the start date, the greater the chance of not triggering runaway climate change. The total global emissions for the first year, say 2012, will be set at their current level. Every year following they'd shrink until, by about 2065, they're almost zero. Initially, each country would be allocated an emissions quota according to how much they currently consume. But this would change over time. America would slash its emissions 90% from its current over-consuming position. Europe too would decrease massively, as would China. But India and Africa would increase until, by about 2025, each human being on the planet would have equal rights to the Earth's resources. Equity is the only option morally, and also practically, as developing countries won't sign up to anything less. The total emissions would then keep decreasing every year, until by 2065 we'll have weaned ourselves off fossil fuels and prevented the worst impacts of climate change. As to how each country divvies up its share to its citizens, there are various options on the table, the most promising of which is individual carbon rationing.
Mr. W.S. Morrison is here to explain.
If, in the course of the war, we are short for a time of this or that article of food, rationing will give everyone, rich and poor alike, an equal share of all that's going.
Governments will only go as far as the population demands, and that means mass protest on an unprecedented scale. Direct action like this is essential if you're going to turn an issue round in a short period of time. We've found that many, many times in the past, from the suffragettes onwards. The very fact that the crisis is taking place within our generation, and it's happening right now, means that we are tremendously powerful people. So this position of despair and I can't do anything and there's no point is completely illogical. It's exactly the opposite.
Lots of ideas have tried to take over the world, but there's only one winner. 3,000 adverts bombard us every day, telling us we'll be happier, more attractive and with better skin if only we buy their products. Together, they create within us an insatiable desire to buy more and more stuff. Americans have been advertised at longest, and they now each consume twice as much energy as the Europeans, 9 times more than a Chinese person, 15 times more than an Indian, and 50 times more than someone from Kenya. If all 6.5 billion people here on Earth consume like Europeans or Japanese, we'd need 2 more planets worth of resources. If everyone consumed like Americans, Australians and Canadians, we'd need another 4. And in 2040 or so, when there's about 9 billion of us, we'll need 2 more again. Capitalism's only goal is ever-expanding growth. But ever-expanding growth on just the one not-expanding planet is impossible. The current economic system is disastrous, not just for the planet, but for most people too. 400 years of capitalism has allowed the richest 1% to take 40% for themselves, leaving just 1% for the poorest half. But anyone wanting to live differently is thwarted at every turn. With profit the only measuring stick, destroying the planet is written into the system, and runaway climate change is a not very surprising result.
Scientists estimate an ecosystem are collapsing across the planet.
We have passed 2 degrees. We cannot now stop runaway climate change.
There are simply too many people to feed on Ireland's remaining farmland.
Suicide rates increasing 800%. The Amazon rainforest is still burning.
And anyone who cannot bear to eat their own cats and dogs.
Entering the 8th world food crisis. With
world temperatures today passing 4 degrees.
Pakistan has launched retaliatory nuclear strike on today.
A war of biblical ferocity across the entire continent.
Life formed to wipe itself out. But what would be unique about ours is that we did it knowingly. I mean, what does that say about us? The question I've been asking is, why didn't we save ourselves when we had the chance? Is the answer because, on some level, we weren't sure if we were worth saving?